Good afternoon, everyone. Let me welcome you to this program this afternoon, this webinar that was put on specially for fathers. Let me thank you for taking the time out to be on this program today. This program is dedicated to our dads. We'll be celebrating dads today, and we have an expert lineup of panelists to share on issues relating to fatherhood and mentoring of men and boys going up into manhood, going up into becoming fathers. Let me now ask you to share or subscribe to our Andrews Memorial S.D.A. YouTube channel and share this program right now. We want you to stop and share to everyone, inviting all your friends, your contacts, and your family to this program so that we can empower and enlighten everyone, because we know that with happy everyone in the family, happy home, happy fathers, happy mothers, happy everyone. So we want to ask you to stop and share this link right now for this program. Let us just breathe a word of prayer as we start this program. Dear Father, we thank you for life. We thank you for health and strength and the ability to connect with each other, even virtually. As we start this program, we pray your blessings and your guidance and your navigations. In Jesus' name, amen. Before I hand over to our moderator, Dr. French, one of our own Dr. Herbert Gale, who's always been a part of sharing with issues relating to fathers, issues relating to social violence and all of these things. Our own Dr. Herbert Gale, who couldn't be on the program today, will give us a short greetings, bring greetings to our fathers. And then you would next hear from Dr. French, who is our moderator. So we'll now have a short video from Dr. Herbert Gale.
My name is Herbert Gale, and I'm the chairman of Fathers Incorporated for the past 15 years. We've been around for the last 30 years, focused on helping men become better fathers. Every single child you see on this earth requires at least one supportive, active parent or guardian in order for that child to be a social product, right? What we know from research is that children who have two active and supportive parents actually almost double their life chances. There are three advantages that fathers have over mothers. Yes, I know some persons may not imagine that we do. Number one is that we, on average, earn more money. Number two is the matter that we are more protective. And number three is that we have 1.5 times more energy, or close to that, to play more. And play is extremely important to children, because what they do when they play with a parent is that they learn to win or lose, to win graciously, or to lose and not complain, and to understand that losing is also a part of life. So they get to deal with a greater sense of discipline and a greater sense of stability in terms of life itself. Now, if you notice, men are somewhat 1/6 times larger than women. We're also more aggressive and we're more protective. So father presence gives the family greater sense of protection. The thing is, and this has always been the core of what we do, is to ensure that people understand that every single child deserves to have a father. So if you look at the wealthiest families, 3/4 of the wealthiest families have an active father. If you go down to middle class, then 2/3 of them have an active father. If you go to working class, about 40% are 2/5. And if you go to the families that are extremely poor, it's just only 1/3 of them have a father. That would mean that their father presence actually is one of the core factors determining where you end up in life in terms of your socioeconomic status. And this is what we're trying to say to people. Every single family, let me say it again, every single family, every single child deserves to have an active, supportive father. Happy Father's Day, all the brothers in Jamaica and around the Caribbean and in the larger diaspora. We really wish for you, all men, to become better fathers. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all watching and participating in this program put on by the Health Ministry Department of the Andrews Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church. This program is at the request of the Men's Ministries Department of the Andrews S.D.A. Church. My name is Dr. Robert French, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon. I am a general medical doctor. This program is in celebration of Father's Day, which will be celebrated in this part of the world tomorrow. We have up for discussion our topic, First Century Man, 21st Century Father. Why does he feel the way he feels? Why does he act the way he acts? We have on our panel Pastor Adrian Johnson. Pastor Johnson is a senior pastor of the Andrews Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church. He's a husband and a father. Pastor Johnson's calling is that of a pastor, which means that he lends fatherhood to a congregation, in this case, of more than 1,000 persons. Pastor Johnson is always quick to respond to the needs of the church. In fact, whether there is a marriage or a death, some type of harm or otherwise, Pastor Johnson's calling is that he will be there. Also on our panel, Elder Genas. She is a Justice of the Peace and head of the Women's Ministries Department of the East Jamaica Conference. I'll now read you a short CV of Elder Genas's position and achievements. Elder Genas served as a director for Family, Women's, Children, and Adolescent Ministries of East Jamaica Conference of S.D.A. Church. She has initiated several ministries, such as Girls of Eloquence, Morals and Standards, in short, GEMS, Brothers of Excellence, Morals and Standards, BEAMS, Committed Wives Ministries, Committed Husbands Ministries. Her academic achievements and qualifications. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from UWI. She has certificate in psychology from UWI. She has a counseling diploma from Mico University, and she has a Master of Arts degree from Northern Caribbean University. She's also a prepare and enrich facilitator. She has specialized training in remarriage and divorce, father, ethical issues, abuse and home violence, peer bonding, and gender issues. She has held administrative posts such as a school administrator, language instructor at Justice Training Institute, career guidance counselor, and regional program service officer of Heart Trust NTA. She's married to Mr. Aston Genas, and they have 3 children, the first of which is an attorney, the second an HR manager, and the third a nurse. Her motto, I must work the works of him who sent me, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Next on our panel is Dr. Agri Irons. Dr. Irons is a senior psychiatrist. Dr. Irons has touched the life of most practicing psychiatrists in Jamaica, if not most doctors practicing at this time. I have sat at his feet. Dr. Irons' name is synonymous with psychiatry, and today he will avail us of his vast experience. Next on the panel is Professor Vereen Shepherd. She is a social historian. And here's a short CV of Professor Shepherd. Professor Vereen A. Shepherd is a graduate of the UWI, University of the West Indies, and the Cambridge University in England. She's Professor Emerita of Social History at the UWI. She's the director of the Center for Repertory Research at the UWI, and she's a published author of 7 books. She's a radio host and scholar activist, especially in the areas of women's rights, human rights, and reparatory justice. She is the immediate past director of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the UWI. As a United Nations expert, she has played a role in helping to implement the UN International Year for People of African Descent and overseeing the draft of the program of activities for the UN International Decade for the People of African Descent while she was chair of the working group of experts on people of African descent. Among her awards, she holds the Order of Distinction Commander Class from the government of Jamaica. She is African Studies, she has the African Studies Distinguished Award from Florida International University. She has recently been elected to honorary fellowship of Jesus or Jesus College at Cambridge University. She is one of the 70+7 women honored for service at the UWI. She's one of the 60 women of distinction honored by the Gleaner in Jamaica, Gleaner newspaper in Jamaica in 2020. And she recently won the President's Award at the St. Martin's Book Fair. She is well known for her social activism and her lobby to establish monuments in honor of historical figures and movements in Jamaica. It is our pleasure to have the distinguished Professor Vereen Shepherd. Next on the program is Dr. Judith Leiber Thomas. She's a child psychiatrist, a graduate of the UWI. She's a member of the Andrew Seventh-day Adventist Church, and she is a wife and mother. Her special area is that of emotional intelligence, and she will be here this afternoon to lend us of her vast experience in the area of child development, child mental health, and emotional intelligence. Our executive producer, whose face and voice you have already met upon, is Dr. Daria Conway. She's the head of the Health Ministries Department of the Andrew Seventh-day Adventist Church, and she's a consultant radiologist. All these people have in common the act of being called to their profession. Their profession is their calling. This is not much spoken of nowadays. However, a calling is far in excess of just a profession. People who have found their calling live their profession. And as such, they are always available and helpful to further the cause of knowledge in their respective areas. We also like to mention that our producers are Sister Pink and Brother Peter and their staff at the Andrews Memorial S.D.A. Church, who control the production as you will have it this afternoon. Now, the presence of our guests, Professor Shepherd and Dr. Irons, is not to be considered an endorsement of the Seventh-day Adventist Church or any religion. They are here to assist us with their vast knowledge on our subject area, and for that, we are deeply appreciated. Now, why are we here? We are here in response to the outcry regarding hurt, hate, and harm in the Jamaican home and in wider Caribbean. There are so many incidences of hurt occurring in the homes and in the neighborhoods in our country, and there's a great outcry. And we aim to highlight the problems regarding men's thoughts and actions in this regard, so that those who do not see the problems may be able to identify the problems where they exist and were not recognized before. Those who have already recognized the problems will gain solutions to these problems, and those who have learned to solve the problems will help others to find solutions to such problems that have been identified, so that We might find areas of interception where we may be able to reach the lost, and by understanding people's thoughts, feelings, and actions, keep the found. Now, this program is focused on fathers, males, because today and tomorrow is being today in our church and tomorrow in this part of the world is being celebrated as Father's Day. We invite your comments, questions on the topics under this umbrella to be sent to our Andrews S.D.A. Church YouTube channel, and we'll endeavor to get answers from our panelists for you, the viewing public. In this program, we shall be speaking to Pastor Johnson in his capacity as a pastor, in his capacity as a man and father. And in this program, the man will critique the men's behavior. The woman is in the similar vein will be Elder Gina's, and she will critique women's behavior. On this program, we do not intend for men to be critiquing or criticizing women, nor for women to be criticizing men. However, the panelists are free to go wherever the facts lead them. The first question will go to Pastor Johnson. Pastor Johnson, tell us according to scripture about the ideal man, his role, his thoughts, and his actions.
Thank you so much, Dr. French, and thank you for having me on set here with these wonderful folks. It's indeed a pleasure to be here and to be sharing in this very important subject. As it relates to the scripture, as it relates to the ideal man, as you asked the question, scripture made it very clear that an ideal person has to, of course, be that person who has a connection with God from within that context, because he who is our creator would have given us certain traits. And of course, we were created in the image of God. And when we talk about the image of God here, we're talking about the whole matter of love, forgiveness, tolerance, and understanding. These are some of the attributes of a good man. And I'm sure we're focusing on fathers today. And a true reflection of what a good father is that we see it being reflected in the relationship that God has with us as human beings. We are wayward, but yet he's forgiving. We are disobedient, but yet he's kind. And he falls reins on the just and the unjust. And that's the kind of father that we see coming from the image of the eternal Father, which is God. And so as fathers on earth here, these are some of the qualities that we should reflect, because the ideal person should reflect that of God. And so from that perspective, I read scripture.
Thank you, Pastor. That said, why do men get married or form unions?
Of course, well, I love the question you asked. Of course, when you look at the book of Genesis chapter 2, and it's a text that I use very often, when God created man, he created other beings before, animals and other things, and he saw that man was somewhat lonely, and so he said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet. And I don't want us to take this out of context. When it says helpmeet here, it doesn't mean that this person is a person who is somewhat lower than the other person. No, a helper, a supporter. So why do men get married? Is to, of course, share the goodness of God, to share the love, because God is loving. And he says, the scripture which I just read a while ago, it spoke about the whole matter. It's not good that man should be alone. So the whole matter of companionship is key. And that is why one of those reasons is companionship, and to express and share the love of God from different perspectives.
You mentioned the word love, Pastor. What is love? What is love in regards to human relations, man, woman, children? What is love?
All right, it's a very loaded question. There are so many definitions as it relates to love, but in its simplest form, is love is indeed a principle. Because when you look at the Greeks had several meaning for love or words for love. You have eros, you have philia, you have there are several, about eight of them you had there, agape, all of these, but these terms are used within certain contexts and they would mean certain things. And so when you talk about the agape love, you're talking about the love of God. You talk about the filial love, you talk about the love between a brother and a sister. You talk about the eros love, you're talking about the whole matter between a wife and a husband. So love is a principle from a biblical standpoint. Of course, there are some people have it to say you like and you love and spirit take. And I think as we get further down in the discussion, we can unravel some of the things that people have to say about love. Because what we're seeing being shown all over, saying it's love, it's not really love. Because love, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, gives the description. Love envy not, love is not puffed up. And so we see it from a scriptural standpoint. So that's how it behaves. And especially when you're married, it's a commitment for life.
Thank you, Pastor. And we'll go to your counterpart, first representing the ladies this afternoon, Elder Genas. From a woman's point of view, who is the ideal man?
Wow.
And we are not asking you about the ideal woman just because today is Father's Day and we are focusing on men. So we are asking you about, from the woman's point of view, who is the ideal man?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, the ideal man for many women is the man that is open to suggestions, the man that will listen to his spouse. The ideal man will hear more, will listen more than he speaks. He'll be a priest-like person in the home. He'll look after himself physically, because that is of importance to many women, you know, the smell, the look, the put together of clothes. Yes, sometimes these little things get in the way. The way you exercise in your body so that you can feel fit. You have good value base. Yes, that means a lot to many women, because that ideal situation and the attributes that I just posited will help to make for a better relationship.
Thank you, Elder Genas. In this regard, what is it then that a woman wants in a marriage?
Wow.
Or a family union?
Wow. A woman is looking for security, certainly. A man who she'll feel comfortable with. Many women look for financial base, because actually, to say the truth, there are women who tell you they don't want no broke man, no broke pocket man, and the rest of it. Yes, so some are looking for a financial base. Yes, many are women. They look for what the man brings to the table. Very often you look around, and especially the women who are climbing the academia, they sometimes feel threatened that the man might get jealous, or he might not want her to pursue the dreams of her life. So for many women, the idea that a man should bring to the table the kind of security that she herself will feel comfortable to pursue her dreams will not be hindered and hampered by what it is that the man will later say. But security stands out, you know, it stands out for many women, because to tell you the truth, for many women I've spoken with, even though they will say finance, many women earn a lot for themselves, and I heard earlier on about men earning maybe more than many women do. That is true, but for many women, they are good dollar earners. So the security matters much on top of the table, and that priestly role in the Christian setting.
Thank you. We have heard, we've heard over many decades the statement, with Jesus in the family, what a happy home. With father in the family, what a happy home. With mother in the family and children in the family, what a happy home. Yet today we hear, happy wife, happy life. Where did this concept come from?
All right, that's a song I've heard that is almost Bible-based. Yes, not almost, it is Bible-based. For with Jesus in the family, it does go for a happy home. It makes her a happy home. That's a principle from heaven, from God himself. If Jesus is in the family, it makes families better. So when a wife feels happy, yes, it makes the family better. And many a times, women go out of their way to make families happy. It seems sometimes that as women, we carry the burden to make the home happy. And so this is where we seek help so often from a man, for the many persons who are married, to make home that happy place that it ought to be. Because when a father and a mother are thinking in tangent, that makes for a difference. Yes, when the wife is happy, then the husband is made happier for the other things that he might demand or ask of. And readily I think about Abigail, who was in a home that she wasn't readily happy. Yes, because her husband had the means. She wasn't happy because of how he behaved, but yet she went out of her way to make home happy for children, the helpers and others. So happy home with Jesus in the family makes really well for a home to be happy. So as women, we do our best to rock the cradle with the help of God to see to it that that achievement is procured. But very often there are challenges in the way when you don't have the partner support.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that one of the attributes of a good man from the woman's point of view is the ability to listen to his companion or his wife. I must say that the BBC has put out information to say that women speak approximately 20,000 words per day, while men speak about 7,000 words per day. However, the Bible oftentimes mentions that women should keep quiet, for instance, in church. And most of the talking in the Bible comes from men, and we don't hear that much talking or the woman's point of view. And I must say that is why you are here this afternoon, because we intend to hear the woman's point of view. So why is it so important that the man should be listening to these 20,000 words per day? And might I ask at the same time, do you want to listen to the 7,000 words that the man is putting out?
Very often, I start with the last part. Very often women do listen to what men are saying. We find the opposite though, that many times the men don't listen to what the women, many men don't listen to what we are saying because they think we chat too much. And very often women really chat too much. And sometimes women take long to get to the point, and the men can't be bothered with the whole story. They want the synopsis of it and be over and done with. So I would encourage our women. I have been trying to do that myself. I've been a chatter myself, and I realize how my own husband responds. And sometimes way down the road, he will ask me, what did I say? And I usually get a little annoyed to know that I said that part already. So because we have so many words, like 3 times the amount, we have a way of saying, yes. So we do have the 20,000 words that we don't spare at all. So we as women can make a difference, but men really need to listen, since they know that this is how we have been built up. Listen more than you speak to us, because very often it's the listening that we want, not so much the solutions, because we also notice as women that the men are quick to give solutions. Many men, I have to call it like that, are quick to give solutions to what we are saying, when we really do want men to listen. Yes, that's part of it.
Thanks for saying that. What is then the real purpose of speaking if you do not require solutions?
Why women speak?
No, if you do not require the solution?
No, we don't necessarily, because as women talk many a times, they can hear in their heads the answer. And because of the gender side of it, sometimes the men don't empathize emotionally the way you'd want them to. So the solutions they are coming up with are sometimes hard knock solutions. You should have done that. You should have done that. We don't do that. We go through the story in our head a little piece at a time. We are very emotional about what we are saying. And since we are built up to speak, we think, like the Bible says, that you must be quick to listen and slow to speak. And even the child would have 2 ears and 1 lip. I think men could try to understand us better, to say we are built that way. You, to make home a happy home with Jesus in the family, spend some more time listening, because many of the times when we are sharing stuff with you, it's not that we want necessarily answers from you. We want to share a part of what is happening. And sometimes we hear, like I said, the answers coming through ourselves when we talk aloud. We want somebody to talk aloud. I sometimes say to my husband, if I don't have you to listen to me when I talk, who am I going to talk to? Because there are some deep, hard things that you want to talk to with nobody else, but the person who is closest to your heart. And so we appeal to men to make home that happy place that God wants as Christians. Please just try and listen to us some more. And we also will learn to cut back, if we can, on the 20,000 words that we speak per day.
Thank you very much, Elder Genius. We are going to ask yourself and Pastor to listen as we plow on in our discussion, and we'll get back to you later on many of these aspects of life, especially regarding Christians and our relations and reactions to each other. I'll now turn to Dr. Irons, and at this time I'll be asking Dr. Irons to basically give some clarity, some depth, some definitions, so that we can understand when we are listening to others for the remainder of this discussion, that we will have a working knowledge of what we're talking about. Dr. Irons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you very much for your fine introduction, especially that part about your sitting at my feet. I seem to remember quite well that you were quite a brilliant student.
That's
So,
very kind of you, sir.
Indeed.
Okay.
I won't spend too much time with the encomiums, but I must congratulate the Seventh-day Adventist Church. As a church, you have preoccupied yourself with the whole business of health, and you are known throughout the world for your emphasis on not just the spiritual side of man, but also the physical side of man, because you recognize that the physical and the spiritual do go together as God made us that way. So enough of that. Now to my discipline, psychiatry, and the whole business of man and his relationship to himself, to his family, and to his society. And the whole business of love and the definition thereof. I think that you don't have to look too far or be a genius, pun intended, to know that loving and charity and kindness are synonymous. Anytime the word love is mentioned, it has a quality of giving. However, you will notice that the word to describe someone who loves is a lover, and that there is no equivalent word called lovey. Everybody is an active giver in the whole business of love. And I think that where our fathers need a little help is how to love and be loved in return, especially in a situation which our other panelists will point out, where they have not been schooled in the art of loving and being loved, and therefore not being aware of the skill and the science of loving, they don't know how to impart it to the generation to come, or to even accept it from those around them. And they become unloving people. You see, there's a simple guideline that human beings could easily follow in their attempt to love one another. And it works for the men as well as the women. Attention is the first word. Begins with an A. We need to pay attention to each other. We must be mindful of each other. We must make other people know that we are interested in what they are doing, what they're saying, and what they're thinking. Attention must be supplemented by affection. You notice that every animal, but especially human beings, feed on affection. We all like to get that good feeling where we know that other people like us and other people show it. Affection is no good unless it is displayed, and therefore it is not just by hugging and caressing and so on, but most of the affection that men and women crave, but particularly women and children, is that they are shown attention, but they must be displayed every time that I like you, I like what you have to say. And then it leads to the third A, which is approval. People crave approval. But if you don't tell your children or your spouse, and I use the word spouse, not the word wife, but your spouse, your intended, whatever, whoever you love, if you don't show them approval, then they won't know what sweet you and what don't sweet you. Approval is very, very important. So we have the A's: attention, affection, approval. And then if you want somebody to be a part of your life, and you want to be a part of somebody's life, there must be inclusion. You must always show that their opinion matters. And even if you are not prepared to use their advice fully, you must allow them to give it. Even the child in the home likes to be asked, what you think, how you feel, inclusion. And then above all of that structure, you put self-control, a very difficult thing for a man to do, but it is something that has to be learned and practiced and taught. Not just the ability to control other people, younger people, weaker people, but the ability to control oneself. And that is something that comes with maturity and study and practice. So if we can master and practice attention, affection, approval, inclusion, and self-control, all falling under the rubric of RIC, then we will be on the way to making 21st century man and 21st century woman play a better role in this doubles game called parenting. We've just finished watching tennis. The French Open is followed by Wimbledon, I'm told, and you will never see a singles opponent coming out to play a doubles game. I done.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned that self-control is sometimes difficult, but needs to be achieved. In that regard, could you give us a definition of the word ego?
Ego.
Ego.
That's something you should have learned at my feet, but never mind. The ego, it means literally the I, the most important word in the English language and the one most often used. Ego speaks to the I. And that's why when the Rasta man speaks about I and I, he really is twinning the egos and talking about the conscious and the unconscious. The ego really, according to classical psychiatry, refers to an artificial division of the personality into three parts. You have the ego, the superego, and the id. In order to understand the ego, you have to understand that the superego refers mainly to the conscience. You also have to know that the id refers to man in his animal unbridled state. And in between the superego and the id, there is the ego, which is the governor. It takes the principles and it applies them to daily life and problem solving, while it sort of quiets the animal and makes it learn to delay its gratification. So the id is the anxious, hungry part of man, and the ego is the part of him that governs him and uses his principles wisely and makes him really the personality that he wants to be.
So we hear
However,
about, okay,
in
go
latter
ahead.
times, people have been said to have too much of a strong ego. A strong ego is not a bad thing in classic psychiatry. But what the people really mean when you have a strong ego is that you're thinking mainly about self. That is a different interpretation of the word ego. When they say you're egotistical, they're really meaning that you may be moving in the direction of narcissism, which is that loving of your own image, not just in the mirror, but in life.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
doctor.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit of the fragile male ego. We are told that there is such a thing as a fragile male ego.
Well,
What is it?
based on my definition, you can see where that kind of statement is coming from. People do not like to be embarrassed. And it used to be in early days of child rearing and even in government by the church and by the school, that guilt and shame were one of the primary, well, two of the primary tools of governing behavior. You're going to burn in hellfire. If you do so and so, you're going to shame me. You're worthless like your old pooper. People used to be fed a stream of negatives in order to be shamed into behaving or conducting themselves in a particular way. And when people are accustomed to being teased and bullied and shamed, their ego becomes fragile. Every little thing kind of trouble them, they overreact. And that overreaction sometimes takes on violent proportions. And you will notice that if you want to make a man angry, dare to tell him anything about his mother, he will tolerate a description of his father, but don't touch his mother. And the relationship between a man, his mother, and his ego is what makes for this kind of fragility, because one of the distinct problems with men, and women will say this, but they dare not say it too loudly, is that I am not your mother.
Thank you, sir. I give you a scenario. You talk about the affection and attention. I practice in the rural areas, and I would have been told at some point, this man can't satisfy. I cook his food and wash his clothes and look after the house. What more him want? And this usually comes in the woman between the age of, say, 45 and 65 years old, where there is some kind of a strain between the partners. And she claims that she's doing all she can for him. And he's claiming that he's not getting affection. And she's saying he should find the affection in the washing of the clothes and the cooking of the food. What more does he want? Would you like to comment?
I think that I'll leave another panelist to talk to you about the so-called love languages. But the age group that you mentioned, remember now that women, when they become menopausal, feel that that signals the end of an era. the end of an era of childbearing, and the end of an era of sexuality and sexual affection. And that is when a man's need for attention and affection, when he is finished sharing his woman with his children, when he wants attention, affection, approval, inclusion, and perhaps lessons in self-control, is when the woman has decided to put down those hats and has said, my love and service of you now is to cook, clean, and so on, because that is how I interpret your expectations. I think that there is scripture talking about that wise woman who darns socks and sells real estate and does all kinds of wonderful things. But the main thing is the giving of love. That is double loving, you know, charity plus loving, plus the fact that a man has need for sexual, and that is sensuous translation of the woman's loving and giving for him. And the problem is that if a man is not getting that kind of attention, affection, approval, inclusion, and lessons in self-control, he will go looking for it elsewhere, because that is the nature of man.
Thank you, sir. We will go to Pastor and Sister Gina's later on the matter, but this leads us to Professor Shepherd's area of expertise, because we make certain observations and we have already stepped into some of them. And we want to find out from the professor now, how has history colored these natural instincts of the Caribbean person? So, Professor Shepherd, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I thought you were going to say something else, but anyway.
From your research, yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes.
From your research, study, and vast experience as a social historian, is there any difference in the thoughts and behavior of Caribbean people who were subject to colonialism and slavery versus the thoughts of people who were not so subjected?
Well, let me begin by saying thank you for inviting me to be in this discussion. And let me greet those who are in this e-conversation, whether as panelists or those who are online watching us. I also want to say happy Juneteenth, happy Emancipation Day to those who are in the United States or who are here in Jamaica as citizens of the United States, because today is Juneteenth. And so that, in fact, is a nice way to get into my field. My field is history. My field of history is the discipline that helps us to understand our past, because the past informs the present. It explains why we do what we do today. And if we are sensible, it can guide us into how we solve our problems in the future. I also want to pay my own respect to my late father and my great-great-grandfather, Alexander Mighty, who was born into slavery in 1829. Their examples, their fight for justice, for rights and respect influence all that I do. And I really liked what you said about the fact that your panelists are people who are not just living without a purpose, but their discipline inform what they do. I am a scholar activist, and that's what I do as a historian. So I don't want to start there, actually. I have been listening to the conversation, and what I want to say is that our history has affected gender relations in our country. It has affected how the society regards men and women. And we must understand that the violence of the colonial project has meant that our country has never, ever been a peaceful place. It has never been a place where equal rights and justice are guaranteed, where we have equality of education or equity in education and in our experiences. We are living in a place where both church and state endorse patriarchal ideologies, and therefore our men have been so affected by these multiple influences that today we are reaping, I would say, the after effects of that colonial experience. So it doesn't matter if we are in the Caribbean, as long as we are in a post-colonial state, a post-colonial region, or even a region that is still affected by colonialism, or experiences and the experiences of men, Black men, Indian men, any colonized man would have been the same. The empowered group, the empowered colonizers, the colonizers who appropriated power and appropriated political power and appropriated economic power, marginalized everybody else, men and women. But they were so afraid of Black men in our region that they did everything to suppress them, to kill them when they demanded rights and respect. And so I say again, we have to understand why men in our society behave the way they do. Pro-colonialism is still with us. Patriarchal ideologies are still with us. The Victorian gender order is still with us. And because those influences are still with us, that is why we are seeing these behaviors in our society.
Can you give examples, Professor, of what was done to the man under colonization, under colonialism, that might now affect his thought and behavior in the 21st century?
Thank you so much for that. Well, I want to read a quotation from a man called Robert Wedderburn. His father was James Wedderburn, who owned a plantation in Jamaica, in Western Jamaica. And I think perhaps I'll do two quotations, one from Orlando Patterson as well, because I think we have to understand the violence of the imperial project and the way in which men were targeted for a particular type of physical abuse. Robert Wedderburn said this in the 1820s. My father's house was full of female slaves, all objects of his lust, amongst whom he strutted like Solomon in his grand seraglio, or like a bantam cock upon his own dunghill. By him, my mother Rosanna was made the object of his brutal lust. And then Orlando Patterson, writing in the Sociology of Slavery, says, the sexual exploitation of female slaves by white men was the most disgraceful aspect of Jamaican slave society. Rape and the seduction of infant slaves, the ravishing of the common law wives of the male slaves under the threat of punishment, and outright sadism, often involving the most heinous forms of sexual torture, was the order of the day. So Black men in our region were subjected to verbal abuse, to sexual abuse, to physical punishment. They were the ones hanged, flogged until their skin was shredded. They were the ones tortured by enslavers. And therefore, the care that men would have emerging out of enslavement would have needed, we didn't give it to them. Because in the post-slavery period, we began to teach them that they are supposed to be in charge. And they didn't have the economic power to match what we were telling them was their role and responsibility. So all of us in our society are collectively responsible for the state we're in today, because colonialism disfigured our states or physical spaces, really destroyed the Black family. Only a few people were able to try and keep their family together. And you just heard the quote from Orlando Patterson. The enslavers never respected the family of Black people. So all of a sudden in the post-slavery period, we are telling men and women, go form families, men must be the ones who are head of household. They are supposed to be the breadwinners. And we have not used education and really a caring society to refashion and reset the thing post-independence. So again, we're collectively responsible, church and state and society, and brethren and sistren, for the state of our men today.
You talk about the abuse of the family, and that I suppose might take many, many aspects. You talk about sexual abuse of the men. What exactly are you saying when you mention those two?
Well, I am saying that that women were abused to a greater extent by white men than by Black men under slavery. That's one. Secondly, some of the enslavers, especially after 1807, when the trafficking in enslaved Africans was supposed to have been officially stopped, forced Black men to rape women because they had no more way of bringing people in for their plantations than through natural increase. So they were trying to use men as studs so that they could increase the enslaved population. Of course, the women never cooperated because a lot of women had abortion so that they wouldn't have to bring children into this world. But what I'm saying is that the abuse was there. Then the family, the man is supposed to be trying to put a family together. They came from a culture where there was family, but the enslaver never respected the union. The enslaver claimed access anytime he wanted to the children, the girls, the boys, the spouses of these men. So men, in a sense, were, if you want to use the word, emasculated, but not by women, but by empowered people in the society. And yes, we're having a heterosexual discourse, but I'm telling you that it was also children, men, boys were also abused. And a few white women, not many, also commandeered the sexual services of Black men. So it is a society that was just organized. It was a criminal enterprise on all levels. And so our people have been struggling since emancipation to recreate the kind of society, the kind of life that they want to live. But it has not been easy because our education system has not stepped up to the plate. And our society is so disfigured. Many people are trying to change the society. Many of our people are trying, and I'm amazed and I honor all our people, men and women who have tried to live a different life and to distance themselves from the brutality of enslavement. But, you know, it's not that far from 1865. And from 1938, and we are supposed to be independent, but we have not thrown off all the shackles. Bob Marley has put it well. We have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. We have the power now to do it, but we don't have the structures in our society to be able to do it.
Thanks, Prof. Along the same line, how does slavery and colonization affect the thought and behavior of our young men today and our young women also today?
You see, our young people don't think in ways like that. They don't know why it is. They're not, first of all, we have not made history a compulsory subject in our schools. Very few people study history. Therefore, they don't know why they are behaving the way they behave. They don't know why the society disrespect them. They don't know why sometimes they are treated like ATMs by women. You know, they don't know why am I expected to be the one to bring in the money and to be head of the household? Why can't I have a partnership Why don't we each take on our responsibility? Because in the post-slavery period, they were told by missionaries and planters that women must stay at home and men must go out and be the breadwinners. They taught our people that the woman's place is in the house. I agree that the woman's place is in the house, but the house I'm talking about is the House of Representatives. We need more for political women to stand up and give leadership to the society. So the Victorian gender order was put in place in the post-slavery period. And it is affecting the way Rasta children are treated, the way hairstyles are policed, how dress is policed. We are living as if we are some little English people. And the English people who brought those ideas here have long distanced themselves from it. But we are holding on. Women can't wear sleeveless. Vaccination is going on. You're supposed to wear sleeveless to the centers, but they are turning away women because women have sleeveless. What kind of foolishness is that? This is what, and I'm saying that from ever since, from the first African was forcefully put here, our people have been resisting, especially our men, or women resisted too. But the majority of enslaved people were male. So you must expect that the majority of people who are resisting are going to be men. They run away, they kill people, they led wars of resistance because our men have said we're not accepting this kind of arrangement. Respect is a big issue in our society. You cannot disrespect people, and you have to believe in equal rights. In this COVID pandemic, we are seeing the unmasking of the inequities in our society. And a lot of men are bearing the brunt of this. We're having Father's Day tomorrow, and I honor all fathers and all those who parent. But there are expectations on men now what to do tomorrow. They don't have the money to send flowers and do this and that. And that's why I don't believe in the ideal man. There's no ideal man. We have to work with who we have and try to be respectful and believe in equality, equal rights, and justice. Unless we have that, we can't solve anything.
Thanks, Prof. There is a phenomenon where young men in Jamaica are calling each other's dogs, their dogs. Would you make a comment on that? Or have you ever heard it? Have you ever heard it?
Of course, but listen, everything that happens in the United States of America, we ape down here. So that is where it's coming from. The same way they drop we can see the underwear and so on. That's coming from the prison culture. It started in the United States. So that they hear it on movies because we are not, what we are giving our children, we are feeding them sometimes the worst aspect of other people's culture because we don't have any values and attitudes that have been bought into by everyone in the society. And we do not teach them history, I repeat. If we taught our people that they have a wonderful civilization to which they are connected, that their history did not begin with enslavement, that their ancestors came from Timbuktu and Mali, great cultures, that Ghana had gold, that you see all the Benin bronzes now that they're scrambling to return. Who made those? I have seen the countries in Africa and the cultures that we are from. We use Timbuktu like it's the farthest place and we're gonna send it there. We banish it to Timbuktu. It's a real place, a place of universities and culture. If you're not anchored to your ancestry, your beginnings, your origins, you're just like wandering about. You don't have any anchor. And what we are telling them should be their anchor. They doesn't appeal to them.
Thank you, Professor. We will come back to you, if you will, a little later in answering some specific questions. And thanks for giving us solutions, as you have done, in terms of pointing us to the idea that we should first be students of history and that we should know who we are and from whence we came. Thanks, Prof. We move on to Dr. Libert Thomas. Dr. Thomas is a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist, who specialty is in emotional intelligence. Dr. Thomas. Dr. Liber Thomas, are you there?
Yes, I'm hearing you, Dr. French. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. We have heard from Professor Shepherd in respect of how men have been treated, women have been treated on the plantation. And of course, you recognize that her statements come with a certain passion, which shows that she lives her subject. Now, I'd like to ask you, what is emotional intelligence?
Okay, let me greet all the other panelists and also all those who are listening. Emotional intelligence is basically the ability to identify, to name your feelings, to manage your feelings, to recognize the feelings in other people, to be able to motivate yourself and to bounce back from any adverse event, and also to interact well with others. That's put it simply.
Thank you. And therefore, how does the behavior of the man, the father, affect the thought pattern of children? Put on your child psychiatrist hat now. The behavior of the father, the behavior of the men in the home and around the home and in the surrounding. Does that have any real effect on the children? And if so, what is it?
Well, let me go broad as Professor Shepherd, really. That remember, our children live in a family that lives in a community, which is part of a society. So the ills of our society really impinge on how our children think and feel and act about themselves. And as Professor Shepherd pointed out, the inequities, poverty, crime, violence are very much there, and they have their effect on how our men behave and how our children behave. Of course, if you have a man in the house and I want to say this parochially, he lets off negative vibes. I think Dr. Ann spoke about the blame and shame game. We've all been kind of schooled in that. The way to motivate our children is through blame and shame, as opposed to like being positive. So sometimes both men and women do that. And if you're really involved in that kind of activity, your children get turned off and they turn more to other people who can direct them where to go. And they don't really see you as a resource to speak to them, to talk to them, to direct them. And some of them become very hostile to their fathers.
Thank you. There is a particular problem seen mainly in boys called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Very, very much more common in boys than in girls. But these boys also become adult men and parents. How is this attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that we are going to now call ADHD? How does ADHD show itself up in an adult man?
Okay, Dr. French, again, I'm going to broaden the discourse. Yes, we have a disorder called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which manifests itself a lot in boys, and the boys tend to be hyperactive, inattentive, impulsive. What has been discovered through the years is that things like if you have certain adverse childhood events, for instance, if you were abused, you live in a house where you're neglected, or if you had like a parent with a mental disorder, a parent who had been incarcerated, all these adverse childhood events, which tend to be related to poverty, crime, and violence, that sometimes the behavior may be very similar to ADHD. And therefore, sometimes it's really hard to differentiate because these disorders are so similar. Nevertheless, what we have found is that when I was studying, we were told that only half of the boys who are diagnosed with, half of the children who are diagnosed with ADHD actually carry it out into adulthood. As I get older and older, the percentage increases to about 2/3 now, if not more. And I think what has occurred, Dr. French, is that when I was young, and let's say you had this ADHD and I had a lot of energy, you could become like a car salesman or insurance salesman, and you travel the island and you make a lot of money. And you didn't have to have a first degree. Now, what's happening is that we're demanding that our children and our men and our women get first degree, second degree, third degrees. So now they have to be paying more attention. And sometimes you have to pay attention to boring stuff. You have to accept that some of your classes are going to be boring. You have to sit through it just to get the degree. Okay. So what we're finding is that more and more men now, more and more adults, we're recognizing ADHD more and more in adults. And it's not, the hyperactivity is less, but the inattentiveness is there. The impulsivity is there. The making of really, kind of, the bad decisions, reckless decisions that don't seem to be well thought out. And the thing is that if you're not really tuned into it, let's say like a Dr. Irons, somebody may go to him and it's like the last thing he may think about, on the list of his diagnosis, because I say it was not well recognized, and because it's the deficiencies impede us more and more as our society becomes more sophisticated.
Thanks. You mentioned certain areas of ill treatment, let us say, of children a while ago. So abandonment, for instance, overwork, beatings, sexual abuse, incest, rape. How does early sexual abuse of a boy by a female affect his mental health? And by that I mean a young boy, pre-pubertal or pubertal, being seduced by a female, maybe of the same age or older. How does that affect his behavior in manhood?
There is conflict. Let me tell you, because I've dealt with a few cases like that. One, the boy has been told by his counterpart that this is fine, this is a rite of passage. Right? So therefore he should accept it and not feel a way about it. On the other hand, the boy knows that in some form or fashion, he has been violated because he wasn't asked. He didn't go out and seek this person. This person just came on him. And I mean, there have been horrendous stories of like gangs almost forcing this kind of activity on young gang members, just to really show that their control over the young gang members, right? So there's a conflict of, yes, it's a right, oh yes, it's a rite of passage, you are the man, and then there is the part where you feel violated, you didn't have a choice, okay? So that can certainly, that inner conflict can really mess you up your thinking and really lead to some really, dysfunctional behaviors later. Any kind of sexual abuse, male, female, male on male, impedes, it impedes your sexual development because your ability to trust is really, really damaged. It impedes your sense of safety. This is my body. My body belongs to me, and nobody is supposed to invade my body without my permission. It breaks that down because, those boundaries have been violated, and you wonder, so are they going to be violated over and over? Sometimes it's said that girls who have been sexually abused, men just seem to know who they are and gravitate to abuse them further because there's a sense there. So it really can lead to a number of ill effects, depression, sometimes suicidal ideation, what we call post-traumatic stress disorder, in terms of really difficulty in dealing with the trauma and having flashbacks, which, which go over and over, you're re-traumatized. Let me say one more thing too, and then I'll shut up. Male on male is particularly egregious in Jamaica, particularly, or elsewhere, because one, if it is known in the community, they instantly say this boy is going to be homosexual. So they don't want to talk about it. And therefore they may not even come for any kind of therapy. So they suffer in silence, and that can be really very, very, very traumatic for the boys.
Thanks. Let me ask you this question. Many children in school, we notice, and even some adults, shy away from even the word love. Why is this so? I recall doing some mentorship in high school, and we would use films to depict various aspects of life. And in a movie such as West Side Story, where the heroine and the hero going to church, simulating marriage. And this is so detestable, especially to the young boys. They don't, the idea of marriage, the idea of loving somebody, is so, they find it unappealing. Do you have a comment on that?
And Dr. French, I'll give you my comment. Maybe other panelists have other. Love is a hackneyed word. It has been overused. I love ice cream, and especially if you listen to the music, love means sex to the young people. I don't know what they call the other thing where you have sex and emotion. I don't know what that word is, but I think love has been equated with sex for most people, and sex doesn't amount to marriage, right? Sex is just sex. So there has to be another word where you have sex and you have our sexual feelings and then some emotional feelings, and you decide to commit, and that leads you to marriage.
Dr. Irons, thank you so much, Dr. Libet Thomas. Dr. Irons, would you make a comment on what we just discussed? The idea of love being almost detestable to especially young males in the Jamaican society. Loving a wife.
I'm going to step into your area and ask you to just reflect on how the word love is used in the Bible. And one of the most striking areas is that it says, greater love hath no man than he laid down his life for his friend. Now, the relationship between men and women is supposed to start out with friendship. Friendship involves giving without keeping a record and accepting with thanks, with gratitude. It is so that the steps of loving are learned. Loving is learned by the trusting relationship of the infant with its mouth on its mother's breast. That is where love begins. That is where it is taught, and that is how it is expressed. Love is supposed to be copied by the positive relationship between couples. And you notice I'm not straying into the gender of said couples. However, there are standard ways of defining couples. Also, love is something that has to be practiced to be made perfect. But we know what love is. This is why sex has been sort of paralleled with love, because of the importance that has been attached to this giving of body one to the other. But then it has been, shall I say, devalued because of the ease with which sexual behavior is shared, when really the thing called love, which is the basis of life, the basis of life, the fact that we oftentimes proclaim that God is love, yes, and the same time saying how God is good. So we must try and elevate love. But it is hard to do that, as Professor Shepherd so eloquently puts it, in a society that is based on hate and human devaluation, such as ours has been consecutively through the years. And this is why we're having a big problem with translating love into day-to-day behavior and getting people accustomed to it. And if I tell you, Dr. French, that I love you, then people are going to start wondering, hey, the two of them gay. That is where we've reached in our society. But we have to learn to love in this society, or else we're doomed.
Thank you, Dr. Irons. I'd like to focus your mind now on a phenomenon that has been observed. In fact, most of the chagrin of some young, unmarried professional women, where it's in the media, especially among some well-to-do people who speak in the literature, mostly in songs, where there is this adoration of mama. These men, 30, 40, 50, perhaps even 60 years old, they will tell you everything from a mama. Where in normal circumstances, one would expect that they would be showering, they are sharing their affection with their spouse. In fact, biblically it is said that a man should leave his mother and father, though having respect for them and of course taking care of them, and cleave to his wife or his spouse. We find that these men see their spouses as just mere objects of sexual activity. And even some cases, and I must tell you, I practice in the rural area, so I've seen it and heard it, they tell their mother, when they are going to have an escapade with the spouse, that mama are going to mash down something now, or I'm going to stab something now, to say that I'm going to spend the night with my female person, whereas mama is supposed to be adored in song. Mama is to get wealth because wealth has been newly acquired. But the spouse is someone you trick, you objectify as a piece of meat, and you talk about in violent language such as stab and mash down. Make a comment, Dr.
Where was that behavior learned? And under what circumstances did it get transmitted and embraced? That behavior was learned from the very mother who is now the actual receiver of this so-called adoration by the son, because the mother, usually having had a single rough life and having been exposed to a parent man who allowed her to bring up the child on her own without much teaching on his part, has taught the boy to love her. And in many situations, the boy becomes a substitute for the missing love man who should have been the parent. And then the boy has conflict in being son, parent, brother, value bearer, social mover, all at the same time. And this is why you will hear this phenomenon and why it keeps being repeated, because it is learned and exchanged on a daily basis. In the whole equation of trust and the building of trust, you will know that men trust their mothers more than their spouses. And that is encouraged many times by the mothers, because it leads to a kind of security that hitherto they did not have, because their men were unable to do that because they didn't know how to do that. And there are other aspects too, in that in a society such as ours, there are rules, mating rules, that govern the behavior of men. And certain men are confined to behaving in certain ways because they know that certain kinds of women don't want them, but their mothers will always accept them. Hence, it's mama straight down the line.
Thanks for your insight, Dr. Irons. I'd like to ask you a few more questions. One of them is the propensity to hit exhibited in women? And what causes men to hit? The propensity to hit.
The propensity to hit is something that happens with people with arms. We have to learn how to control our very hand them, okay? And you will notice that somehow we have contrived as a human race to describe ammunition and guns and so on as arms. What we're supposed to do with our arms is to hug and embrace and give comfort. But because of our violent enterprise, I love the term, we have learned to use our arms against each other and in violent ways. And men have stronger arms, is sort of thing set. But women will strike back and strike back in unique ways. And when arms are used against each other, as your friend Bob says, everywhere is war. So there is war in the house, and the propensity to hit has got to be trained out of the human being. We have to learn how to live in peace. We have to learn how to speak to each other without harm and to speak to each other without abuse. And we have to learn, as I said before, how to show attention, affection, approval, inclusion, and self-control. These are learned things that were not taught in the societies that we are coming from.
Thank you, Dr. Irons. Let me probe a little more with you. What is going on in the mind of a man who considers or carries out the act of murder or harm or murder of his spouse, and then go on to suicide? You might have met upon some who might not have been able to carry out the suicide as well as they wanted, and so you would have probably been able to speak to or assess them, or even just the murderers. What is going on in their minds?
You have to have an interesting view of life, your life, and the value of other people's lives. You depersonalize a person, and unfortunately, there are laws that says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife in close proximity, because sometimes the wife becomes goods, the girlfriend becomes goods, and in the transactional nature of the male-female relationship, the man who is the more violent one with the more violent arms says that if I can't have you, that which I've paid for and I keep paying for, then I can get rid of you because I own you, and or nobody else is going to have you. So I am going to dispose of you. And because all of this is backed up by the cinema and the television, as Peter Tosh would say, you then have this remorse and guilt, which says, now that I've done this, I am not going to let anybody take my life and put me in prison. I am going to show what a bad man I am. I'm going to kill myself. And so it is killing all around, but it starts with the abuse and devaluation and depersonalization of the woman as object.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. French, before you go on.
Sister Gina's, yes, all right, yes, you can.
I'd like to share something that is running across my mind just now in relation to the many women who harbor what their sons do. Their sons have several girlfriends and they entertain them when they either come to their homes or whatever. And then later on, when the sons, the women start to react to, I don't want to be in a relationship with you having 6, 7 persons because they have now found out. The women, the wives, the mothers would have entertained this stud-like behavior in the early years, rock the cradle or rock with the babies. And later on, when the men can't take this anymore because there was a time in their life when they could manipulate 6, 7 women, but as the women get older and they start to communicate and connect, something else happens. And you hear about men, if I don't get you, if I don't get you, can't have you, I'm going to destroy you and myself. So I'm saying this out of an abundance of caution for the many women who, when their sons are behaving a certain way during their youthful time, to say stop, and stop should mean stop without them entertaining them.
I too want to just join in with Dr. Irons and Sister Gina's. Certainly, I have had situations just as what Doctor said earlier, with folks, husbands or male folks believing that the woman is his good as to her. And I've seen cases in my own practice that the husband thought that the wife was having an affair, and he got so upset that one morning he went in his living room and he started to chop everybody, and believing that the wife and children are all dead. And he ran down the gully and he used some grandma's own and drank it. And sad to say that when I went to the hospital to look for him, he was still alive. His feet were all blue, hands blue. And but before that, I was counseling with him because I recognized that he was thinking of doing some bad things. And he was saying to me, Pastor, you know, I am not going to do anything like that. But the news came to me, and it was just that. And a few days after, he died because he thought the woman was his goods. And so we have to seek to get this out of the minds of men and even women. You have some women who believe in that men are their goods, and so it goes both ways. And so I think what we need to do is to put value on each other and for relationship to continue. And we're all valuable in the sight of God. Whether you're a male or a female, we are all valuable in the sight of God. And I thanks Dr. Irons, I think, and Sister Ella Gina's there. These are very good points. We're not goods, we're people.
Pastor, 1 Corinthians, and I'm speaking now to people who have the Bible as their guide. 1 Corinthians 7 verse 4, Paul says, neither the wife should have control over her own body, but the husband, and the husband over his body, but the wife. Now, how does that sit with the laws of the land?
Well, let me see if I can address it. I'm not a lawyer, so will not attempt to deal it from a legal standpoint.
Let me attempt to say the laws of the land say, as was expressed, and you have it, that the person is not your property. The other person, but the Bible is saying that you should have mutually given each other over to each other. But then the law of the land says your body is your own, and no one should touch, enter, or violate or enter it unless you have given them express permission. Not in fact, no, there is such a thing as marital rape, where 20 years ago such a thing did not exist, because at that time a woman's body was considered to be the property of the husband. But it is not so now. Would you comment on these men feeling that the women are their property? Is it that the Bible has become irrelevant, or is it that they were misled, or is it that they have misinterpreted the Bible?
I think you have given the right answer, misinterpreted the Bible, because even though the Bible says that the man body belongs to the woman, it's speaking within the context of a marital relationship, in terms of sexual relationship. Of course, no one should be forced against his or her will. But it's an it's an arrangement between the wife and the husband within a marital context. And so it is important for us never to even force ourselves into or upon any person. If she says no, if he says no, respect that. But of course, it is with an understanding that, look here, we're married and your body is my body within the context of a marital union in terms of sexual relationship, but it should be a mutual understanding. In fact, the same chapter that you're looking at there talks about mutual submission. Sorry, Ephesians chapter 5. She submit herself and I submit myself to her, so that, of course, the relationship can be of a normal one. So if she says no, you should never ever force.
May I postulate though at this time? Are you hearing me?
Yes,
Doctor, please go ahead.
May I postulate at this time that it is very difficult, and I know Professor Shepherd should really be allowed to speak on this. It is very difficult to insist on this kind of behavior based on mutual respect when we're coming from a situation where Bible believers, where the institution, the church itself, was telling people that it was okay for people to belong to other people, where they themselves kept slaves, and where men and women who are coming from that kind of institutional example are then asked to not behave as if another human being is property, when really the whole society was set up on the basis of people being other people's property.
Professor Shepherd, would you like to elucidate any in this regard?
Yes, thank you so much, because I'm even reflecting on what the marriage vows say. I mean, some of us do not repeat those things. I mean, I never promised to obey anybody. But if it is that the pastors are in their marriage vows still telling women to obey, and when they, when they realize that, but you're not somebody I should obey anyway, or why should I obey? We must have mutual respect in any relationship. Why must I obey you? You must obey me too if it comes to that. So I agree, you're right. I mean, the church itself, maybe some denominations are departing from it, but I'm talking about the church as an institution has always supported patriarchal ideologies. And there's been an intergenerational transmission of that view. And I will just read something from the UN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And it states that violence against women is a manifestation of historically unequal power relations between men and women, which has led to domination over and discrimination against women by men, and to the prevention of the full advancement of women. And that violence against women is one of the crucial social mechanisms by which women are forced into a subordinate position compared with men. So this belief of what masculine should be rested on the power of the acceptability of the heterosexual discourse, strengthened by evangelical biblical ideas teachings. And within this discourse, masculinity is a social construct based on male-female power relations. So we still have hegemonic masculinity in our society. And the youngest male child believes in that because that's what boys see. And it rests on this public-private dichotomy that renders women in the private sphere the division of labor. And I said before that in the post-slavery period, even though, for example, in the period of slavery, most of the field work was done by women. Women were also in the domestic sphere. So they were in the field in excess of men. They were nannies, they were wet nurses and whatever. Men from the period of enslavement were given tasks on the plantation and co-opted into the patriarchal ideologies of white men. They were given the role of artisans, drivers. They were the one beating women. The overseer, who was usually white, was not usually the person who was administering the flogging. It was the Black drivers, and this is what they were told to do. Black men as drivers were told to administer the flogging. After the war led by Sam Sharp in 1831, in 1832, over 600 people were punished. And if you look at the punishment list, 300 lashes, 500 lashes, 200 lashes, who administered? The Black men. So we have had this thing coming down. And Andrew, when you talk about everywhere is war, but think about what Bob said before, until and His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie, until the philosophy which holds whether one race or one class or one people superior and another inferior, there's going to be war. This is a gender war that we have because we have not taught our boys to have equality in a relationship. And remember, I think I mentioned this in another context recently. Most of the dropouts at the maybe fifth form level, the dropouts are male in excess of females because society say it takes too long for me to go earn money. I am supposed to be the head of the family. And I'm the breadwinner. This is what they were taught. Even at university level now we're seeing they can't bother to go on to graduate school and so on. Women are dominating because women were subordinated. Any group that is subordinated, any group that is treated as inferior will find a way to come out of it. Women have done this in excess of men. So at the University of the West Indies and any college or school at the sixth form level, you're going to see more women because women, just like enslaved people, use war to come out of slavery, to force the wicked people to free them and to take their freedom themselves, in fact. Women have used education as a means of getting out from under the feet of people who are telling them that they are inferior. So now what we have is that a lot of women are earning more money than men, and men feel this is not right. So, and then women are not blameless too, because there are some men making good money as plumbers, carpenters, masons, but they don't want them because we have a class system and we hierarchize. We have a ranking game in our country. We hierarchize occupation. We hierarchize with residential address, uptown, downtown. Every single thing in this country is ranking. Therefore, some of us also make the men feel inferior. Why you can't marry a plumber because you have a degree? Why you can't, you know what I'm saying? So this kind of inequality and inequity. Look at the schools. Oh, I went to Monroe and KC. What about if I went to Excelsior? You know, and all of us practice this thing. And until we reset our society, until we get rid of this notion of a patriarchal hegemonic masculinity, we are going to have this conversation over and over and over again. Sorry, so long.
Could I say something there?
Yes, Pastor, please.
All right. Okay. I just love what Professor Shepherd has said a while ago. Clear. But speaking again from my background is Bible here, biblical perspective here, the one flesh concept when it comes on the question you asked earlier. When you look at Genesis chapter 2, 18 through 25, that's where I speak from. It speaks to a covenantal relationship, it's a complementary arrangement, not a competitive one that is between a man and a woman. In fact, each person within the relationship would understand the roles that they should play. In fact, it is best described in scripture as we see here. In fact, both persons are asked to submit themselves to each other. But certainly from a specific role, the man was also asked to love his wife and the woman was asked to submit herself to her husband. But let me hasten on to say that this submission has nothing to do with subjugation. It's not, you're not being should stepped on, because the relationship that we see there in scripture is between Christ and the church. And so we speak from the context. It's not no good woman would withhold herself from being submissive to a man who is caring, who's understanding, who is tolerant, who is forgiving. That kind of submission it's talking about here. This one flesh concept is all about caring and sharing within a bonded, intimate union, and that is between a man and a woman from the context to which we speak. And so when the Bible speaks about she's a helpmate, it's not talking about a person who is so subjected to the person, but one who is comparable to him. So I think many times we read the scripture from the standpoint because of the history that we have found ourselves in, and it sort of color it that kind of way. But certainly when it speaks about a wife submit herself to her husband, it's not talking about she being subjugated. That's not what it's talking about. It's that the both of you work together. Because in the same scripture, which is Ephesians chapter 5, it speaks about the man submit himself. So the both work together as a team for the union. So that's how the whole one flesh concept comes in.
But Pastor, a man always comes away from this explanation and from the marriage situation, and in fact the relationship situation, a man always comes away feeling that he is the more powerful and superior person. They don't see it as a lesson in equality and a lesson that says you must take care of the woman in the same way that you take care of yourself, because A, they don't particularly take good care of themselves. So if I'm going to treat a woman the way I treat myself, then she's in for some bad treatment, if you know what I mean. So we have to. I mean, given Genesis and all the way to Leviticus and wherever we're going, we need to definitely reteach our people the interpretation that is one of equality rather than one of superiority and ownership.
But sorry, excuse me, but even to use submissive or whatever, I mean, we don't need that kind of language. I don't, I mean, I can't, relate to what you're talking about actually, because I don't live my life with those instructions. But, and I know what missionaries and biblical teaching did to people. They took out all the equality part of the Bible. In the museum in Glasgow, now you can find a Bible called the Slave Bible, where they took out all the teachings about equality and justice and so on, and they just give them the terrorist part of it. So I'm sorry, but I don't, that's not how I can challenge you on that, because I don't,
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Let's just.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Irons. Dr. Cornwall, you had a comment?
I have in celebrating dads, I have a tribute to dad that I want to have aired now, and then some questions that were coming in from the audience. But we have a tribute to dad in our celebration of dads. So we're going to take that tribute now, and as we continue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Corn.
Happy Father's Day, Dad, from Brittany to you. Just wishing you all the best on this day, sending you lots of love and God's blessings. Want to remind you of how much of an influence you have been on my life and Jamie's life. You have taught us how to treat people, how to work hard, how to live with integrity, and most importantly, how to love and honor the Lord. Have a great day.
Hi, Daddy. This is Jamie. Just wanted to wish you a very happy Father's Day and tell you how much I love and appreciate you. I know that Brittany feels the exact same way. So I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm sorry that we couldn't be there to celebrate with you, but hopefully we'll be able to come see you soon. We love you very much. Bye.
Is there any other?
Yes, Dr. French. Because running through my mind, I hear clearly what Pastor has said, but even as we sit in the church pews, I know that there are some women who feel threatened by the very biblical words. And even as I heard earlier on about sleeveless clothes, I still remember a lady complaining that if she puts on a red dress that she likes, you know, her husband doesn't want her to wear red because he doesn't like red. So I can understand where Professor Shepherd is coming from because of what submission means to some Christian men. Yes, so we have to be careful even as we say to the men, the women are expected to submit, but submit to what? Because if it's not the agape kind of love that the man is showing, which is what is expected from Christian men, then it becomes a little difficult for submission to take place. And even as I read again Abigail's story where she should submit to her husband in such a way that she shouldn't have to go out to David to tell him what was happening in the household, but she did it to save lives. And another thing I noticed that sometimes men feel threatened by the upward mobility, academic mobility of some women because they cannot bear the idea that the women have moved upward and they don't want them to be leaders. And this doesn't necessarily mean the husband. There are many men who feel threatened by what we as women do as we move up because they don't want to see us being leaders. They feel very threatened. And so we'd want to appeal to fathers, men, and the rest of it, that we were all given a brain to as women to stand up and stand tall beside you. So you should not subjugate us to, submission, house chores, and the rest of it. But let's see how we can work and so that each person can bring out the best in them.
Thanks, Elder Jesus. Dr. Cornwell, any further greetings or any further questions?
Okay, so that was our tribute. In celebrating of men, I have a question here. Now, is it that in the celebrating, in women rising to the hierarchy and getting more prominence with education, is there something about the way they start treating men that can make men feel inferior at this point? This is one question coming in. Women rising in the hierarchy, is there something about the way they treat men at that point that may make men become a bit insulted?
Who would like to take that among our panelists?
I'll answer the question if you don't mind. Are you hearing me okay?
Please go ahead, sir. Yes, it's Dr. Hines.
Men don't need any help in feeling inferior. And I must tell you that in our society, we have to face facts that in terms of the hierarchy, let us say there are 4 groups. Non-Black men, and I say non-Black, and non-Black women, and then you have Black women and you have Black men. If you broadly divide our society into those 4 groups, then Black men are at the bottom of that social grouping simply because Black women who have acquired the education and sophistication qualify themselves for the attention and affection of both types of men, the Black men, the non-Black men. The Black men, however, at their rate of dropping out, at their rate of feeling inferior, do not qualify for high ratings among non-Black women and Black women, which leaves them at the bottom of the ratings and leaves them with a sense of inferiority. A sense of inferiority in the whole psychosocial development of man is the opposite of a sense of industry. And as long as our men continue to be less industrious, they will try to seek ways of easy wealth creation rather than ways of equaling up themselves, because they have already, by our social standards, norms, and behavior, have been put at the bottom of the pile.
Professor Shepherd, do you have a comment in this regard?
Yes, I would like to say, though, that it's not always a class situation, because there are women who are academics, let's say. You have qualified yourselves, you have gone as far as you can in your discipline, and you're working in an institution, let's say it's a university or a college, with qualified men who also have their PhDs and so on. But do not believe that these men accept academic women as equals either. So the patriarchal ideology is not confined to one group of men or the other. It maybe the academic women may have a choice economically if they feel they can tolerate a situation, because some of them are married to academic men. But as you read, I was director of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. So I have been exposed to, complaints and views of academic women and academic men, and women in the police force, women who are in the JDF. I've been exposed to all of the conversations taking place. So it is not only about working class men, quote unquote, or men who drop out and so on. The ideology of hegemonic masculinity pervades everywhere. And I have seen it operating at all levels.
Thank you, Prof. Pastor, would you like to make a comment at this time?
Certainly, I would. Yes, I concur with the other two speakers. We see it happen. Of course, there are some men who feel real timid. Some women really flouted on some men who we see they backing off, don't want to be in any kind of relationship with women who are educated, and we see it right across the line. But of course, I have often said to some of these women, and I've spoken to so many women who are educated, who have wealth, and who would like to have partners, but there are some men who are scared of even talking to them because of what they think these women would say or do to them. And in truth and in fact, some of these women really want to have a relationship. But of course, just the notion to say that this woman is an educated woman or she has some kind of wealth to that, they back off. But in truth and in fact, you have some women, they really do just that.
Thank you. Any other question, Dr. Cornwall?
Yes, I have another question that came in, that was WhatsApped in actually. It says, why is it that our schools have failed our boys so much?
Professor Shepherd, I think that would come to you.
Well, I don't think it's only the boys that the education system has failed. It has failed everybody. This morning on my program, I got a comment from someone who was talking about the children who were turned away because they didn't cut the hair or whatever it is. And the person said, some of us come out all right in spite of, not because of the school or the teachers, and we really have to fix our education system. Again, it goes back to respect. And if the people who are educators do not have respect for the children in the school, and if the content of education is not appealing to the children who are in school, then you're going to find, a difference in the way they react to schooling. So I would say it is failing both girls and boys. Girls with a certain kind of hair, they are being discriminated against. They are being sent home, and the uniform has to look like Queen Victoria length clothes. That's what some of the schools are putting on our girls, and thinking that is going to somehow address sexual violence. This is not where you start. Everything in our society is punitive. The education system is too punitive. Our society is too punitive. Rather than fix the system, we just bash and batter, you know, and I think we have to fix the education system. Train.
But before we fix the system, Prof.
We have to train our teachers and train our people to respect children have rights.
But before we fix the system, we have to decide what the outcome is that we want. What are we preparing our children for? Are we preparing them for employment in a particular society, or are we preparing them to think and to live and to uplift themselves?
All of the above, because in the past, some of our schools did that. We want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to be engaged in a post-colonial education, to decolonize the disrespect and the Eurocentric content. And we also want them to be equipped in a way that they can go into a job if they wish. So I don't like the dichotomization of STEM and STEAM. We must mix them up and don't only train people to be doctors and lawyers. Have rounded education. And don't believe that the CAPE level 6 form is the end of your education. Do your best with it, of course, but train people to either go off to have their passion, whatever it is that they want to do. If they want to be in a skilled occupation, encourage that. Don't let children feel that something is better than the other thing. And also, again, our society, we rank people. If you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor or whatever in those areas, you are somehow granted respect better than somebody who works with the hands in terms of a plumber, a carpenter, and so on. So if it is that the children are seeing in the society these disfigured behaviors and deformities, then, you know, but again, we are teaching them, we must teach them to be critical thinkers. We must give them the kind of education that give them self-respect and a good feeling about themselves. And we must stop telling them your uniform must be down below your ankle. Don't wear fade. Why shouldn't boys feel good about themselves and how they have the hair? And they want to be Rasta. What's wrong with that? This belief that you're going to have lice and this and that, it's rubbish. You know, teach them about grooming and keeping yourself decent, clean. That's it. But these Victorian ideologies are in our schools. And this is what is happening. And they are turning the schools, some of them into churches. And some of the children don't want to go to church. Simple.
From where you sit, Professor, is there any change afoot in the education system? Do you know of anything that's going in that direction?
I see we're going backwards and we're not going forward. That's what I see.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Can I just give some more greetings?
Yes,
I have some greetings here. Denny's right. Happy Father's Day to all men. Stand strong. We support you. Do not fall under the trick of the devil. I also have from Veris, my dad loved his wife, respected her, and was not threatened by her, celebrated her strengths. I also have coming in from Olive Harvey, wishing all fathers a very happy Father's Day. Kelly's Murray sends greetings to Daddy. Happy Father's Day to my father, Vermont Murray. He's super hardworking and has always pushed my siblings and I to strive for excellence. More greetings, Sharon Barnes-Wilmot. Happy Father's Day to all fathers. Very special greetings to Vermont Murray, who has fathered so many in a godly manner. I also have another comment coming in from Alicia. What I like most about my dad is his intelligence, his kindness, his provision, and his spiritual insights. I could always rely on Dad to help me with any assignment I had in my school years. Arlene Frey says, Happy Father's Day. God bless you all. And same is coming from Mary Smith. Happy Father's Day to my brothers. As I will bring in more Father's Day compliments as I get them. One person said at the beginning of the comment, why are we celebrating Father's Day? Is it pagan? Question to the panel.
Pastor, would you answer that? What is pagan about Father's Day?
Well, there are a lot of people have a lot of things to say it is pagan. Of course, there are some historical setting as it relates to that, but certainly it has its merit. Whether not everything that is pagan, I know some people throw stones at me now. Not everything that is pagan is bad, in the sense that there are some things that we still practice, but it's a fact that there are some things that are pagan that we should not practice, but not everything that is pagan is practiced. What relates to Father's Day, I think Father's Day has a place to play where you can honor your father and make a day, set a day out more to say, yes, Daddy, we love you. We appreciate your work, what you have done for us. From that perspective, there's no problem with that.
Thank you,
Pastor. Paganism, and I'm sorry, but what is paganism though? There are different cultures. And we just have to say some cultures are this way and some cultures are that way. Our culture might be different from another culture. But I want to share in the, sending respect to dads and honoring those who father and mentor. But I have to say that the idea that there has to be a man in the house, no matter what kind of man, I think we have to unpack that, because we are seeing under COVID-19 when people have to shelter in, and you can talk to doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, child rights activists, and they'll tell you that some of the men because children are known and young people and women locked up in houses on lockdown weekends and so on, they're seeing a rise in sexual abuse. So it's not only having, man, woman, and two children or whatever the ideal size is. It is about who the person is and whether that person brings value to a relationship and is kind and caring and looks after children and anybody else in the family. I think we have to understand that. And I do not support disrespect for anyone, whether men or women. We must have respect.
And
coming in.
It is best to have an absent parent rather than a dysfunctional one.
Thank you, Dr. Irons. As we focus on this, yes, go ahead.
Dr. French, I would like to endorse the culture of Father's Day, because had it not been for Father's Day, many fathers would not get appreciative words. And what it does is perpetuate this culture, which say to children who don't say it during the 364 days, Daddy, I love and appreciate you. It helps with that too. And just as Dr. Aaron spoke, I was about to say that in many cases while I was in the classroom, visiting relationships of many fathers spanned much better than those who were actually there, because many children did not get affirmed by, and when their visiting daddies came along, many times they would get questions like, how are you doing in school, and words of affirmation. So many times the fathers are just there, and some of them are busy putting money on the table, but they're not stopping to affirm and to help children to grow emotionally. So to hear these young children coming out to say thank you to daddy, if it's even one time a year, it makes a difference for me and to many other women who want more children to come out to say thank you to fathers. And just to say in the same breath that there are some boys who were not given the kind of care, and still some are, the kind of care that they are to get to grow, to aspire to what they want to be, because there are some women who still spend lots more time and money on girls than they do with boys. And even though the culture or the tradition is there with boys not doing as well, I am at a place where I'm with boys now in the mission group, where I noticed that our little way of affirming the boys have been helping many of them to go past, just stop here. Many people in school, when they hear the children want to become a mechanic or so, I have met so many of them. Leave them alone and let them become the best mechanic, owning their own place of business and the rest. Why are you afraid of a girl becoming a cook? Why are you afraid? So there are these things going on that prevents children from aspiring to be the best of what they can do. And even our culture, sometimes when I hear, oh, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you cannot enter that kind of occupation, we don't have enough money. It's time that we rise out of our situation and help women so that our children can do better. I inspire them to do better, especially our boys, because I have seen the difference with nearly some 50 boys that are within a little shelter that we have. They come from different homes, but working with them, I've seen them move from high school into university and are doing well and mentoring some other children.
Thanks, Elder Genius. We must refocus on the mischief that we are trying to solve. That is, in our society, there is a cry now by women, and I've heard it on television. Who fi stop kill we? Who fi stop beat we? Who a murder we? Now, this is, for those listening from other cultures or language, this is saying, you men, stop hurting us. You men, stop killing us. You men, stop ill-treating us. Now, I would like to get Pastor and the psychiatrist and perhaps the historian and Elder Genius to tell me, how does a man de-escalate an argument? And also, how does a woman de-escalate an argument? That's the question on the table now.
All right, firstly,
before Pastor comes on with the de-escalation, while they're thinking quick, let me just give a few shout outs in the group. These are some comments coming in from the group. Before we go to how to de-escalate an argument, let me just give this comment. Michael Proteus, bitter people will continue to be bitter and forgiven no matter how much education they get sometimes. Comment coming in from Trevin Little to her dad. Daddy, your equal does not exist. Your words of wisdom reverberates in my mind every day. Because of you, excellence remains the minimum standard in all domains of my life. Much love. Message coming in from Shawnette. Right, my dad is gone, but I loved his tenacity, his perseverance, and loved the commitment to family. He was also such a mighty prayer warrior. Down to the very end, sola spiritua was his foundation. Donovan Hanson, the progressive, dedicated, and committed man, stands beside his wife as an equal. He respects her and supports her at all times. That man does not feel threatened by his wife. Big up to those men who don't feel threatened. Big up to men, big up to them, big up to them. And the other one comments that women, mothers have such a responsibility in shaping the men. We need to see more women shaping men well in our society. Sister Gunning, Yvonne, happy Father's Day to all fathers, including the men on the panel. My brothers genetically and spiritually, to my children's father who gave to his children education and psychological support. And last two comments, Cora McDonald, fathers, like mothers, are pillars to the development of a child's emotional well-being. Therefore, they should be honored. Patrick Wrangling, as a father, I have to teach my children what I think is right, not a pander to these views I hear on the program. Let me continue now back to the panelists about how do people de-escalate, how to de-escalate situations when things are getting hot and possibly aggressive? How do men de-escalate situations? How to de-escalate arguments?
All right, let me first get a try on this. It's inevitable that when you have people coming together, you will have conflicts. It's, because people think differently. And especially within a relationship when couples are not seen eye to eye, and it happens right across the board in church and outside of church. This does happen. But one of the key things in terms of de-escalate, as you rightly ask, is for people to learn to listen to each other. Listening is important. Empathy is one of the things, showing sensitivity and understanding and listening beyond words and reflecting the feelings of the other person, because it's important. Because I've seen so many cases when couples may come to me and they are on top of their voices and this one not listening, and it creates problems after problems. The other thing too is that probing, ask questions in order to gain more information about what is going on. Why is this happening? Why are you doing this? When I do this, this is where you feel about this sort of stuff here, which is so important. And within the same probing there, this self-disclosure, share something about yourself, in the conversation, why you do this and why are you doing that? And certainly, these are three things, but another one too is if you are not able to really solve the problem, get a third person who you trust dearly. And so that person can come in between both of you and of course listen to you and listen to the other person and deal with the situation. And as a man of God and as a pastor here, I can't leave out prayer, which helps a lot. And those are about 5 things I put on the table in terms of this de-escalate. Another thing, if it gets so worse, you may have to separate for a while, because many times if things get so terrible, you stay into the situation, you may find each other hurting.
I would like to I would like to suggest, Dr. French, that one of the things, or 2 or 3 of the things that a woman can do is try not to raise your voice, because already the man thinks that he's who dare you. But a good thing to do to de-escalate is to keep calm and truly listen. Pastor spoke to listen, but truly listen. So if he sees that you're not pushing the fire, more fire sticks mean that you're gonna blaze up, and you don't. If somebody must be the fire brigade, yes. So if the other person is ablaze, you will be the cooler, and try to stick to the point. Don't try to outdo and say I am right and try to get the 50-50 off or so, and have an open mind about the discussion that is taking place. And when you get an input, make it so calm that it forces the person to listen. And even if it doesn't, it will give the person a time to cool down, because your response is on the calm side. Your body language truly says, I don't want to be in all of this that is happening. And so I am asking you to, by the tone of my voice and my respect to you, because I'm listening to you as you get upset. I'm sorry. I can even apologize for the behavior. I'm sorry that you are getting upset. When you get the chance, instead of trying to dissect the information, I'm sorry that this has brought us to the point where you are so upset. But when you cool down, because when you cool down to somebody might send them rockers. So at a time, as you see best, I'd want to talk to you about it some more. And the quiet prayer, as Christians, we believe that changes situation.
Thank you. I think emotional intelligence should be applied here, and definitely all the statements from Pastor and Elder Genius are basically statements of emotional intelligence as I understand them. But Dr. Liber Thomas, how does one de-escalate an argument? Emotionally intelligent. Dr. Liber Thomas?
Yes, I'm here. Uh-huh.
How does one de-escalate an argument using emotional intelligence as their background? male and
Okay.
female are in an argument, which might come to blows or worse. How does each or either of the parties de-escalate?
Well, first of all, let me join Sister Gina's by saying one person has to decide that they are going to de-escalate, okay? So one person has to decide that, okay, this is not the way we're going to resolve this problem. As I said before, emotional intelligence is really being able to manage your feelings. So yes, you may be very, very upset, but you can see the other person is very upset and reaching to boiling point, and it's probably not as controlled as you. So as Sister Gina said, you may have to try to just really still the waters so that that situation can be dealt with and downscale. And then at some point in the future, you ask, you have a more rational conversation about it. Remember, emotional intelligence also entails seeing the emotion in the other person, mind the feelings in the other person. And we all know by living with partners that there are some soft spots that people have. And sometimes we push people like, they have corns, and we say the things that we know are going to hurt them the most. Okay. So that is something you're definitely going to avoid. And you may even realize that your partner is doing that to provoke a reaction out of you. Sometimes you have to walk away. Okay. So that's where I would end it. But what I want to say is wait. What I want to say is that sometimes one partner is always de-escalating, and it seems as if you're always giving in. And if you don't have a forum where things can be discussed, it's just gonna fester and fester. Thank you.
Thank you. We are winding down.
I have some comments coming in from the audience, some comments coming in.
Please recognize, Dr. Cornwall, that we have about 5 minutes left according to our scheduled time. So we are winding down now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, so can I give 5 comments coming in from the audience let me just, Donna Davis, my father died 35 years ago, but he was the gentlest, kindest man ever to my loving one of a kind husband, Lassell. A happy Father's Day. He's a wonderful provider, the hardest working man I know. I love you. Coming in from Jennifer Williams, happy Father's Day to my husband, who is a committed, loving, and caring father, not only to his children, but to many others. He is a good father and husband. Good. His family loves him so much. Anthony Lewis, also sending greetings. Gavin Lowe, in COVID 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Those are some of their comments that were coming in. And happy Father's Day to all the panelists. Happy Father's Day to Dr. French. Happy Father's Day to Pastor Johnson. Happy Father's Day to Dr. Irons. Happy Father's Day to all of you coming in from the panelists.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cornwall. Okay. A story is told in the Bible about a woman who was caught in the very act of adultery. And of course, in this story, and adultery, we are led to believe here, would have meant sexual relations, possibly even intercourse. The woman was brought to Jesus to be stoned. This woman was caught in the act, but the man was not brought to Jesus to be stoned. So this tells you that people have their biases. Jesus wrote some things on the ground and then said, "Whoever is without sin, let him cast the first stone." Everyone left her alone. Some might have slunk away. Some might have showed a clean pair of heels. They just hastily retreated. In Jamaica, we hear that the men are worthless. And many times we hear them talk about, in Jamaican parlance, worthless men. But figures show, since the embassies have started doing DNA tests for fathers who are filing for their children, that 25% of Jamaican fathers are unknowingly rearing children that they did not father biologically. The sickle cell studies in the 1970s showed that 70% of Jamaican children were born to the wrong, were attributed to their wrong fathers. 70% of men have been given what is called in Jamaica jackets. It therefore shows, just as in the story with Jesus and the woman caught in adultery, that all categories, not all individuals, but all categories are culpable. Therefore, we need to humble ourselves and to submit ourselves to each other rather than to be on the high egotistical horse and claiming that our men are worthless without showing, or worthless without showing their counterparts with whom they are expressing this worthlessness. Therefore, I'll make you two quotes as we wind down. Socrates said, by all means, marry. If you get a good wife, you'll be happy. If you get a bad one, you'll become a philosopher. And it is attributed to a great president of one of the great countries of earth that a good wife always forgives her husband when she is wrong. I'm sure you will find some humor in that. But as we close, we want to understand each other so that when we speak, we are actually saying the same things. Now, the Bible states that a husband and wife should become one flesh. And many people believe that, wrongly, that in this one flesh situation, that you can say anything you say, you can essentially do anything you do because you are treating the person just as yourself. So if you can think it, they can hear it. But this is not scriptural. So as we enter into our Vespers, this is the thought. Malachi 7, verse 5 and 6. Trust ye not in a friend. Put ye not confidence in a guide. Keep the doors of thy mouth from her that lieth in thy bosom. For the son dishonoreth the father. The daughter riseth up against her mother. The daughter-in-law riseth up against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are in his own house. But this is not telling us to treat our family as enemies, but it is saying to us that trust, the final deepest trust, is to be in God. What we must have for the people in our household, in our family, is respect. We should respect and understand each other, knowing how far to go. Micah 7, verse 7 says, therefore, I will look unto the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Therefore, we are behold to commune with God. That is, to commune means to put your deepest, most profound trust in God. Your intimate communications or rapport must first be with God. You're sharing your deepest emotions of your thoughts, your mind with God in prayer. That is what it means to commune with God. What is required is that we respect our partners. We communicate with our partners, but we should commune with God. So, in closing, Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. To fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of mankind. Having your focus being primarily on yourself or on your spouse or your children is idolatry. Having your focus on sexual satisfaction, as is the case with so many Jamaican men, whether lawfully in marriage, is also idolatry. We were made as human beings to commune with God, and we are to respectfully communicate with our family and our including our spouses. So, brethren, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for it is the whole duty of man. We thank the panelists, Professor Shepherd, Dr. Irons, Dr. Liber Thomas, Elder Genus, Pastor Johnson, and all the supporting staff for having made our discussion this evening what it has been. It is for you, the public, to tell us how fruitful it has been and if you have benefited. It was a privilege bringing this webinar, this discussion to you. And we thank you. And may I see the face of Professor Shepherd that I can tell her personal thanks.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Shepherd, for lending us your expertise.
Yes.
We know it would have cost lots of money for someone to hire you to sit for 3 hours to tell of all the studies you have done over many decades. And indeed, we at the Adventist Church count it a privilege to have heard your point of view.
Can I just wish my husband of over 40 years of marriage happy Father's Day? I have 2 sons. One of them is a new father. He's an excellent father. We did the best with our 2 sons. And I have to say, they have grown into lovely young people. And I wish all fathers, if you think you have some way to go, all right, work on that. But it's not an easy job. But, as I said, respect is due. And I honor and thank my own husband for the over 40 years of partnership and love and support.
Thank you very much, Professor. Dr. Irons, any final remarks?
I fully endorse the panelists' views, and I've been very happy to participate as part of this whole. You will notice that there's been a lot of synchronicity, and we tend to be moving in the same direction, but the society, the family, the nation that we're trying to build will not be built overnight. It will not just be built brick by brick, but individual by individual and family by family.
Thank you very much, Dr. Irons, personally and from the church. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Dr.
And I would ask, I know that Elder Genus and Dr. Liber Thomas would like to, as an example, also wish Happy Day Fathers greetings to their spouses and to fathers. So I would like them to do so now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cornwall. I would like to raise my glass to the man who supported me with our 3 children for over 36 years, Chef, over 36 years, and they have all turned out to be fine children by our standard. Yes, and we are truly happy for them. They are making us happy in their output. So here you are sitting next door to me here. Aston Trevor Genus, hats off to you for taking us through the storms and being with me, understanding my different culture of mothering versus your Sam Chiloni to St. James. Happy Father's Day to you, and tomorrow will make you feel better.
Thank you very much, Elder Genus. Dr. Liber Thomas?
Okay, thank you. And let me play tribute to my husband, Alfred Thomas. We've been married 33 years. We have 3 children, and he has been a good father. He has worked very hard, I must say. And we have been good partners together. So let me again play tribute to him and also to my deceased father. And I want to play tribute to all the fathers out there who are really trying to do their best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Labor Thomas. Pastor, the final words are yours. Pastor Johnson.
Certainly, thanks again for having me on set here this evening with the wonderful set of panelists. I think we have done well in terms of dealing with the issue, the topic that was on set. And I too want to say Happy Father's Day to the other men who are on set, yourself, Doctor. I know you've been a father for many years. And Dr. Irons, I just want to congratulate you folks being a father. And I'm sure that our children will call us blessed. And may God be with us as we continue to, of course, highlight the good side of fathers, because they are fathers that are good, and not just to think that men are bad.
Thank you so much, Pastor Johnson. And from the Andrews S.D.A. Church, a very goodbye to all who listened and participated. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for as we end this program. We have a few announcements that will be coming up. We have a few announcements coming up for our dad for programs tomorrow.
No.
We have a few announcements coming up for our program tomorrow. Let me also give Father's Day greetings to my dad, who is overseas, John Rodney, and also Father's Day greetings to my husband, who is the father of our son, Derek, for being an excellent dad. Happy Father's Day to you, Derek.
Join the Andrews Memorial Seventh-day Adventist Church's men's ministry for a father-to-father session featuring the Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness.
My father is a deeply intellectual person, deeply spiritual person, and that too would have shaped my own character.
And head of Jamaica Union of Seventh-day Adventist Pastor Everett Brown as they share their experiences about fatherhood.
I said, Jonathan, you know, when you were going through that difficult situation, I knelt down at my bed and prayed for you and I cried. And he says, oh, Dad, why are you crying?
This Sunday, Father's Day, June 20 at 5 p.m. on this platform.